All right, we're diving into a pretty wild idea today, one that really messes with the origins of human thought. What if poetry wasn't just art? What if it was actually the very first science?
So let's really dig into that. Think about it, an operating system. This isn't just a metaphor. It's a way of asking what code our earliest ancestors used to make sense of reality, long before abstract thought even existed. It completely reframes how we look at the dawn of civilization.
To get our heads around this, we've got to meet the guy who came up with it. We're talking about an 18th century Italian philosopher named Giambattista Vico. And trust me, for his time, this guy was a total radical.
Okay, so picture this. Vico is living smack in the middle of the Enlightenment, this era that was all about cold, hard, rational thought. But he pushed back. He looked at human history and said, wait a minute, the roots are something much more primal, more sensory, more poetic.
And this was his big mission. He wanted to build a new science that could explain how our societies, our laws, our institutions all came to be, but not just through logic. No, he argued we had to understand the shared, evolving story of humanity itself.
So that leads us to a huge question. How did the first humans possibly make sense of the world when they didn't have abstract concepts or even the words for things? Well, Vico had an answer, and he called it poetic logic.
Now let's be super clear. This isn't about people sitting around writing poems. For Vico, poetic logic was the only cognitive tool set they had. Figurative language wasn't a stylistic choice for them. It was reality itself. It was how they processed the world.
He actually broke it down into these 4 key tools, or tropes. You can almost see them as these slick, 3D building blocks of consciousness. Metaphor, metonymy, synecdoche, and irony. These weren't just fancy literary terms. For early humans, they were the basic command functions in their mental operating system.
But Vico didn't just stop at that starting point. He went further and mapped out this incredible journey for the human mind. He argued that our whole way of thinking has evolved through very distinct stages over history.
Basically, he saw humanity as growing up. We started out in a world we could only understand through our senses. That was the age of poetry and metaphor. It was only much, much later that we developed the ability for abstract reason and entered the age of philosophy.
And this is where it gets really mind-bending. For the primitive mind, a metaphor wasn't just a comparison. It was the thing. The sky wasn't like an angry god. The sky was an angry god. For us, that entire way of thinking has become, well, just a figurative speech. It's just decoration for our literal scientific world.
You see, and this is Vico's most brilliant insight, really. We never actually got rid of that original poetic foundation. We just built our modern rational world right on top of it. We are literally standing on the shoulders of this ancient poetic wisdom.
So this brings us to the big question, right? Why does this 300-year-old idea about poetic wisdom matter to us today, right here and now? It's a cool thought experiment, but what's the takeaway?
While Vico would say it's because that poetic wisdom had 2 jobs that are absolutely crucial. First, it was the bedrock that all early societies used to build their laws and their religions. And second, it was the tiny embryo from which all later knowledge, yeah, including science itself, would eventually hatch.
And so that's the thought we want to leave you with. Think about it. From the powerful metaphors that drive political slogans to the stories that make us fall in love with a brand, how much of our supposedly rational world is still secretly running on that ancient poetic code? Maybe a lot more than we